It is our holiday ghost story horror reading night, and we have some great guests. And let's just hurry up and get to it.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly. Use the front door! Oh, they're so disgusting.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Before them stood the house of their nightmares.
I dreamt of doors and shadows.
Can't see anything. Is scary as fuck.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a scary as fuck holiday celebration. As Rob was unable to make it, we are always glad to have him in the introduction for this. So I hope everybody had a happy holiday season. Hanging out tonight, we got some great people. We're going to have some great ghost stories going on. Ratatosker is hitting the makers tonight. He's getting the good stuff. And I do have to, this is required by my family. We had our white elephant exchange, and I somehow got something that was very fitting for me. So for display this entire year, we get the Viking drinking horn that is actually so rough and disgustingly crudted with stuff on the sides that I will never be bringing this to my mouth unless I get the entire thing like dipped in a lot of metal and run through something that will sterilize it a lot, because it's really gross.
The fires of Mordor.
Yes, but of everyone to receive it, I actually opened this rather than having to trade for it, and my contribution was two little clown baker doll, clown baker salt and pepper shakers, and a random doll head that with a hat that somebody was selling, because who doesn't want clowns and doll heads for Christmas?
Yeah.
You know. Oh, well, okay. Then it's a good thing you weren't at our family celebration, Steve. So tonight we have got Dr. Raz T Slasher, Steve Van Samson, Ron, Tylor James, and Friday are all going to be doing readings, and I'm going to be sitting here hosting because I feel like crap. And I think I could make it through a whole story. I'm going to look pretty and push buttons and do stuff like that. It's going to be a great time. And he's going to get drunk. So how's everybody doing? How are your holidays? What would you like to share with the people?
They're over, yay. And that's where I'm at on that.
Where did the holidays fall in haunt season, Raz?
Well, we did two fantastic, very different shows for people for the Christmas season. We did our traditional cinema night where cinema characters invaded the haunt, from like B films to mainstream horror. That was great. And then the show we did after that was a traditional Christmas show where we had like cannibalistic elves this year. And you got to go through our haunt and shoot our actors with gel blasters as an added extra bonus. So it was pretty successful. Oh, and we did a Breakfast with the Grinch event. That was a lot of fun, and the community really liked that for the kids. So I know that's what I liked about Christmas, but the best thing was tearing all the Christmas out of the haunt. because it was over, and I got to take the trees and throw them in a pile, and that was fantastic.
Nice. Pretty cool.
And that's about it. Lots of blood, screaming, shooting
Lots
things.
of blood.
This Christmas, I like it.
A couple horrible maimings.
Only a few.
Nothing serious.
Only one I shot out.
There you go. Ron, how was your holiday season?
Nothing overly spectacular. I went over to my cousin's mother's condo in Dublin, and we have a very ethnic family because my cousin is half Korean. His mother is full-blood Korean. She's from Seoul. My cousin has a daughter who is dating a guy from India. So he was there with his mom and dad. So we had 4 different ethnicities of food. We had Korean barbecue. We had tandoori buttered chicken. We had, what else did we have? We had some Chinese food, some General Tso's chicken that somebody brought. I don't know who. And some steamed dumplings with like egg roll filling in them. And, your usual standard American good old pizza rolls. There was plenty of food to go around. I kind of wish I could have brought some of it home, but there just wasn't anything left. So we also did a white elephant exchange, and I ended up with one of those blanket hoodies, a big old hoodie that's made from a fleece blanket. Very nice, very comfy.
They're made from Huffalumps.
Yeah.
No oozles were harmed, though.
I was wearing it just before the podcast, but too hot here. So.
You also joined us for one of the hot nights.
I did, and that
was
there.
Spectacular. There's a video of it. He was spanking people, and he let the reviewers with the camera spank him. There's a whole video.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the asylum.
Is that an After Dark video, or?
No, an actual YouTube video.
Well, it was After Dark when it happened.
Company, yeah, it was After Dark.
Technically,
always After Dark in the hot.
It's up on YouTube on the Scare Factors webpage on their YouTube channel, so you can find it.
There's people playing Nurse Indian in stockings and everything.
Tyler, how was your holiday season?
Oh, the girls and I had a very fine holiday. We went to my wife's side, the family for Christmas Eve, and the highlight of that, other than the delicious meal and the company, is my father-in-law and his brother play a very mean foosball, and so these foosball tournaments that occur, and it's the 2 old guys against the younger group. And the old guys trash talk like mad, and it's just really hilarious to listen to. They call each other broken down mules and all this kind of stuff. It's really quite fun. And then I attended another ghost story telling event that my friend Josh Haynes put on at his bookstore. He's got a bookstore called Other Skies Weird Fiction. It's in West St. Paul. It's just a marvelous store, and every year he, sits next to the Christmas tree and we read M.R. James stories or any other sort of ghost story, and it's just fantastic.
Oh, that sounds like so much fun. That's why I love that we have this get together, because it's just like we don't get to sit with each other, but we're with each other in spirit, And Friday with all the little ones, how was your holiday season?
Christmas Eve was amazing. I love that day. Christmas, I wish I could have skipped. But, my favorite black kitty is in a better place, and we shall see what we can do forward. That was not the best way to spend that day. But the rest of the holiday season was okay. But Christmas Eve was great.
I'm so sorry about the kitty, honey.
Yeah.
That's sad. So, okay. Sorry to do it that way. This is also going to be our first holiday without Uncle Necro. So this is something he loved. So let's hopefully have some nice spooky stuff for Uncle Necro to be telling to him. And we didn't determine this beforehand because we were all kind of jumping in at the last moment. Well, not all at the last moment. Hi, Mana. But is there anyone who is on a time schedule who needs to be leaving early?
We didn't hear about Steve's Christmas, though.
Oh, no, that's right. Steve just asked about yours.
Yes.
Steve, how was your Christmas?
Delphine. It's pretty good. Yeah, it was a good time. This was kind of a weird one because it was the first one without my mom. So, that was like her big thing was always Christmas and everything. So like, there's a lot of emotions going around for sure and stuff. But we started some new traditions, which I think was really fun actually on Christmas Eve. So Friday, like same, like Christmas Eve was super, super fun. We went over my best buddy's house, who's our old co-host on Retro Redoctopus, my show, Nintendo. Went over his house, and he had never really done anything like that before to like host. And so his whole family was there. So went there for like 1 o'clock, and then at nighttime went to my brother Tim, who's 8-Bit Alchemy on Retro Redoctopus, and we had a good time with them. We did. I don't know what the rules are for a white elephant. I'm not 100% sure what that means. You guys are talking about but we did something that was kind of like sounds kind of similar. Maybe like we did. There were gifts, and they were all wrapped, and they were all from the hosts though. So it was Tim and his wife, and they got all sorts of stuff. So some of it was like completely lame. Like there was a can of Manwich was one of the prizes that was wrapped up, and there was also like and there was also like good stuff too. And then there was like a game we played. So it was like, oh, pass it to your right, exchange with somebody, that kind of thing. And I ended up with a makeup kit. Which I then traded my daughter for a 2-pack of Hostess cakes. So that was
also no makeup tutorials from you in the future.
No, I just ate the Hostess cakes. Yeah. So that was pretty good too. But yeah, pretty good time, pretty chill Christmas Day. Not gonna complain with the fam. So it was nice. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody kind of has their own rules on them. Like there was one side of my family buys like somewhat decent shit, although it's kind of funny. The other one is where I got this requires it has to be used, it has to be under $10, and we like draw a number, and then you pick a gift, and somebody can steal it from you or pick their own gift. But something can only be stolen twice. And like I have received such things as a rear view mirror. Just somebody was selling it. Yeah, I'm like, I don't have a car, let alone this model, but I have a rear view mirror. Awesome.
I don't even own a gun, let alone many guns that would necessitate an entire rack. What am I going to do with a gun rack?
Exactly. They just get the weird, like, one of the best ones was a child's like training potty but it was like an old one. So it was like this old wooden thing with a hole in the middle of the chair that had a spot for toilet paper on the side and a little magazine rack, but it didn't come with the part that you'd potty in. Like hair dryers from like the old hairdresser places.
They're awesome.
We just get the weirdest stuff. And there's a trophy that goes around, and whoever you have to display your prize for the entire year, and you have to, if you have the trophy, you have to remember to bring it. And yeah, so
that's awesome. That sounds really fun.
It's fun. You get bizarre shit though. Like, and beyond that, my sister's father-in-law, who is an awesome guy. He collects body parts from people that he knows, friends and family, like teeth,
Like you do.
gallbladders,
Yeah.
anything that's been removed from their body,
Who doesn't do that?
and makes jewelry and stuff from them.
Sure.
So I'm like, okay, you get the
That's what you
memento
do.
mori type of thing, but like my sister a couple of Christmases
Oh,
ago,
you like that bracelet? That's Nana's spleen.
like I'm into like the hair ones and stuff like that. I've done things with my hair, but like she got hoop earrings with molars, and it's like, oh, that's Aunt Marge's molar and that's so and so's, and she's just like, wow. And she was a sport. She like wears them for him when he's around sometimes.
That's how you do it in Nebraska. That's how you do it in Nebraska.
It is. It's a Nebraska thing apparently, but you know, like it's one thing if you know the person, but these are just like random people to hers, you know, like teeth.
I don't want
to hang out her
anyone's teeth except my own on my body.
When you want to keep your family closer. Body jewelry.
Keep your family close, but their molars even closer.
It is traditional. Just usually, you know, it's someone you knows, but you know,
it's literally body jewelry though, like literally.
Oh yeah, it is. Okay. So now that we've got all that out, who would like to go first this lovely evening? Tweet.
Okay, we got volunteer.
All right. So everyone prepare, and we will not be pulling up comments during the tellings of tales because, yeah, that would be rude. So, Tyler, let me pull you up.
All right.
All right. Let us go.
Excellent. All right. Well, this is a story that I haven't published anywhere else yet because it's pretty new. But it is indeed a ghost story, and it is also a Victorian tale. And this is called Up in the Dark Belfry. 1. I've made my home in the belfry. This is no surprise, for I've always possessed some fascination for high places. It has been so since I was a child. Always I treasured a lofty boulder overlooking the pond or the topmost branch of an elm tree. In my 20s, I climbed Mount LeConte and found it an admirable perch. If you have never caught this strange fancy, this obsession with being high up, then I have little faith you will understand. One day, men will soar like eagles and build nests in the clouds. Our hot air balloons are merely the beginning. Who knows what tomorrow brings? This is my attitude. I look forward and upward. Clouds flit across the cerulean sky, and I envy them. I wish to bathe in the clouds and build a home in the sun. But if not a bird on the wing, I shall settle for the belfry. The bell is absent, and the lues are replaced with windows. Polished pine wood serves for the floor. It is within this narrow chamber I have set up a desk for writing. My wife insists on calling this space an attic, but she is mistaken. Despite its lack of a bell, it remains a belfry, as determined by the spiritual quality of the room. Oh, how I adore this small space where a bell once hung, and its iron tongue was several times rung every single day. Sometimes I think I hear it still. It affects my temperament, and oft-times I shiver with the silent reverberations of the old church bells. On occasion, children race past my tower, singing, "A priest did hang today, up in the dark belfry, his ghost has come and play, up in the dark belfry." This juvenile stanza refers to a local legend, the silly notion that a priest, upon gaining the knowledge of some dreadful misfortune, hung himself in the belfry. Many spectators were said to gather, drawn hither by the hideous tolling. Thereby was his lifeless body discovered, swaying to the clamor of the bells. Ah, but children do tell tales. I do not subscribe to superstitious hogwash. I have climbed the mighty Appalachians and have witnessed the vast heavens, yet never have I observed any gods, devils, angels, or ghosts. At this moment, I gaze down at the dirt roads, the tops of poplar trees, and the people passing through. Carriages rock and creak, hooves clip-clop the air, children shriek, and women haggle with shopkeepers. This summer is a hot blazing affair. Thrice a day the men pour buckets of water upon the road so as to settle the dust. While I am a bird cozy in his nest, I sit up in my tower and write and watch. A bell chimes. I nearly drop my quill, and a frisson chills me to the bone, an inexplicable shudder of unease. Yet now I laugh, and the feeling vanishes, for my wife has rung the dinner bell. I lay down my quill, bottle my ink, and set aside today's pages. Then I descend. My heart sinks a little, as it always does when I am enticed to leave the roost, and upon entering into the dining room, I give my darling wife a kiss upon her cheek. We sit down at table. A fine spread, darling, I tell her, truly fine. How is your tale progressing? She asks, and for a moment I am taken aback. Her beauty utterly stuns me and prevents me from answer. She sits in a sunbeam, and her braided hair seems weaved with golden thread. Her skin is ivory as the tablecloth, and her dress flatters, though modestly, her capacious bosom. She laughs at my shocked look. At ease, fool, she smirks. Focus on your dinner if you've an appetite. 2. In our bedroom confessional, we profess our love and prove it fervently. How I adore my precious Ophelia. We lay in the moon shadows gleaming through a tall arched window. She sleeps soundly in my arms, her breath warm against my neck. It is our first night in the church, or rather our house. A reverence lingers in these rooms, a still warm afterglow of sacred psalms, gospels, sermons, a spiritual remainder better felt in one's heart as opposed to explained logically. But, of course, such is the nature of faith. I lay here, bathed in her warmth. Heretofore we lived together in the city. We were unhappy. The noise is constant in the city, and the streets filthy with vermin and disease. I could not write, I could not think. My publisher demanded good works, but I delivered lackluster products, results of industry, but not of inspiration. My publisher argued with me, and I them, and thereafter, taking my stresses and anxieties home, I argued with my wife, my darling love, and it came to pass that I grew dreadfully nervous. I grew haunted by night terrors of hell. Visions of demons crowded my brain, waving quills, dripping with blood, and devilish editors stripped me down with vicious insults personal to my soul, and my life grew into a black maelstrom into which I was delving down, drowning. I made an attempt upon my life. Ophelia caught me in the act. Thereafter it was decided. We must move far from the hellish city, its idiotic hustle-bustle of insect activity, and the constant intrepid noises, smells, and sights which bombarded our souls day and night. We found this town. We found this church, abandoned 30 years, crumbling away. And upon gazing up at the paint-flake clapboards and the vacant belfry, I knew, here we could make our home. Ophelia thought me mad. Everyone did. The church was affordably purchased on account that no one in the town considered it valuable property. On the contrary, they considered the building cursed and the land soiled. But what is a suicide? It is a moment of frailty, of weakness, a moment of irrevocable self-murder. But after that, it is nothing but a haunting memory to those who knew the victim. Life soars on, free as a bird, and builds its nest in any durable tree. It is no matter if, once upon a dreary midnight, a man hung himself from its lower branches. Over the springtime, I hired a group of workmen to replace the roof, clapboards, and windows. They removed the church bell upon my request, and stowed it in the dank basement. There it remains to this day, a black brass shell, and the rope with it. Now it is summer. Bright, blazing, beautiful, like Ophelia, my love. I have never adored anyone more. We have grown together, our souls inseparable, like twin roots, coiled and intertwined, for to blossom upward in a wise, mighty oak. For upon those lofty eaves we rest our tender hearts. We are happy here. Oh, thank God we are happy. Laying here, our hearts beating as one, I am inspired to tears. And yet why do I shiver? I am not cold, for the night is warm. The heat is, in fact, stifling, and I am damp with sweat. I open my eyes and study the darkness. The door to the hallway is open. Did I not shut it? I squint my sleepy eyes for to study the vision. A man's silhouette in the moonlight. Gently I remove Ophelia from my arms. She slides away and gathers her pillow, mumbling dreamy nothings. I climb out of bed. I grasp my hurricane lamp and light it. The flame illuminates the room, and I creep into the hallway. The man is there. I hold up the lamp to better perceive his face. A sickish green, mottled with purple swelling, distinguishes his color, and his disheveled blonde hair hangs o'er his brow. His blue eyes stare piercingly into mine, and I open my mouth to speak, to order him to leave this house at once, but my soul is petrified with terror. The man smiles. He is dressed in black with a white collar. "You like high places," he says, his voice light as spider silk. "As do I." His voice tolls in my ears, a light, melancholy chime. Were he not an intruder, I might consider his tone pleasant. As it stands, however, I am induced to violent shivers. "Get out of my house," I tremble, and for the first time I observe the man's emaciated body, how tightly the ill-hued flesh conforms to his bones. "Get out," I scream, gesturing as if to throw the lamp into his face. "Get out, damn you!" I step forth angrily. He steps into the shadows and is gone. Ophelia calls to me from the bedroom, her tones resonant with fright. I tell her to stay in bed. I search the house, inspecting every corner, every room, and soon the old church blazes with lamplights. I inspect the closets, the basement, and, of course, the belfry. The man is gone. I lock every door and window, dash the lamps, and retire to bed. 3. I do so love children. They zip to and fro, little sprites of the town, boys and girls, all terrifying each other with tales of the belfry. A little boy, munching on gingerbread, points up at me. "There he is," he shouts, "the ghost himself." I lean out the window, grinning deliciously. "Hearken," I gasp, with eyes bulging. "Come and play up in the dark belfry." The children shriek, then run away, giggling. Thereafter, I return to my writing. The pages pile up, for I truly believe this elevation does wonders for my muse, who, always flying high, easily lights upon my roost and inebriates my brain. I am writing now about a man in a belfry. Some postulates a sense of shame in autobiography, but such a notion is foolish. If one does not draw upon their own experience for the craft of fiction, then what on earth does one draw upon? Everything in life is color-hued by our own glasses, the composition of literature being no exception. I am inspired every minute of the day, so long as I reside in the tower. Up here, nothing is left unobserved. Every friendly or ugly face on the street, every peddler with his wares, the hurdy-gurdy man with his wheel fiddle, the children gather around, fascinated, and his strings do decorate the air most handsomely. In a nearby saloon, a honky-tonk piano, a little out of tune, warbles its melodies, which drift upon the air, catching upon the eaves, and thereby are carried up to my lofty belfry. I imbibe every sight, every sound, and I write my novel, which, I believe, shall constitute my great work. Each word is delicious. I have drunk the nectar of the gods. To commune with the sublime, it is necessary for one to climb Mount Olympus and see as the gods see. To know the future, one must consult the oracle of Delphine. To receive resplendent vision, one must partake in Kukion and initiate themselves into the Eleusinian mysteries. Being unafraid of heights, I have climbed Olympus, consulted the oracle, and communed at Eleusis, the belfry, and my spirit does chime, moved by the wind, and makes music not unlike that fabled Aeolian harp of yore. Play me, O muse, ring me like a bell. Hearken, my spirit is tolling, and I am heard for miles. 4. I think of the man, the night terror, the blue-eyed priest in the dark hallway. Normally, I am not susceptible to such irrational codswallop. Nevertheless, these local legends worm their way into my brain, and seeing as it'd been my first night in the church, I'd fallen vulnerable to suggestion. Now my terror is cast out, and I cannot picture a home anywhere but here, up in the belfry. Ophelia rings her dinner bell, but oh, how faint it is in comparison with the tuneful carillons of the muse. I refuse to climb down. The novel grows voluminously, the plot taking unexpected turns. Hours pass, and the pages do stack one upon the other. Ophelia knocks upon the underside of the trap door. Angrily, I toss it open. She flinches, observing the whites of my eyes. "Your dinner is cold," she says firmly. "I made a delicious meal, and now it is cold." "Cold?" I say, astonished. "Nonsense. Such a temperature may be found in your heart, but surely not mine. Do you see these pages? Do you see my spirit aglow with the fires of creation? Then you know I am hot. I am steaming, a whistling kettle. Now get back to your pretty pragmatics, your pitiful practicalities. I am busy, I tell you. She shrinks back, but only for a moment. How dare you speak to me this way? She says gently. Claude, this isn't you. You've gone batty up in this bell tower. Now I demand it, and shall not take no for an answer. Come down at once and eat. She descends the stairs. With my foot I slam down the door and resume my good work. 5. I do not eat. I possess a pitcher of water, however, from which I drink, and this refreshes me, and I carry on scribbling down the visions which night and day assail my heart. Ravenously, rapturously, I write. Is there any other way? Long gone are the days of staring at a blank page. No more shall the quill go numb in my hands, nor the ink upon its tip turn dry with dullness. I am taken upon the wing of visions. I soar, I scream. The children approach my belfry no more. They stay away. No more rhymes nor games. Perhaps they are frightened by the paleness of my face, the emaciated tightness of flesh which clings to my holy bones. Also, I have taken to nervously rubbing my neck, a harsh massaging between thumb and forefinger, so that a purple bruise is prominent upon my throat. A little girl shrieked at my visage, then raced for home, as did her friends. Ha! What of that? I am a holy ghost. I command exquisite dreams. You are reading them now. Undoubtedly you are complicit. I invite you to share my dreams, asking only that you do not claim them for your own. For if you desire to pen prophecies of the poet, then you must sacrifice. You must climb the stairs to this darkened tower. Here you must stay, and ring the bell with your neck. Claude? The trap door trembles beneath my feet. I keep my weight upon it, for I do not wish to see her wretched face, nor listen to her griping. I am the reverend spirit, and I must bring forth from the primordial abyss of Dionysus those visions which require telling, prose form, Apollonian order. Claude, she repeats in tears, please won't you come down? It has been days. I am worried for your life. And I yours, I mutter, laughing. I open my mouth and toll for the world. Ring me, O muse, ring from out the heavens, for to sound upon every low-lying place upon the earth, drown out every other sound upon this dreadful sphere, and darken the gloomy skies with vast sublimity. I am pure priestly phantom. I speak from the Godhead. 6. The energy which commands grass and trees to sprout and reach for the sun is identical to that spirit which demands I inhabit the belfry and summon the gods. The universe hums with divine energy. It is this upon which I draw dreadful dreams. I take no responsibility for anything I write, say, or do. The Godhead works through me. I am its agent, its vehicle. However, in order to commune with this omnipresence, one must tuck themselves away in a high place. See, the monks and nuns in their castles, the Bhikkhu in their temples, Moses on the mount, Simeon the stylite upon his column, and the divine lunatics in their asylums. And yet, what is this I hear? A distant voice below, calling a name. I think it was once mine, for I do believe I once possessed a name, just as sure as I believe others possess names. It is that damned harpy. What? I shout at the trap door beneath my boots. What, pray tell, motivates this disturbance? Are you not aware this loft is a sacred mount, a holy temple? Do you see fit to disturb all monks in their meditations? Ophelia, yes, that is her name, tells me something about a visiting sheriff. But what could this measly man of law, human, not divine, want from me? I am the communicator of vastness, and not some peddler of practicalities. I have offended, it seems. I have done wrong, according to the strange sensibilities of these lowly apes. I lift my foot from the door. Coming down, I say, trembling all over. I see Ophelia's face. It is familiar. She is pale with concern, and looking into her eyes, a strange affection surges within my heart. I remember quite suddenly and painfully that she is my wife. Upon reaching the bottom of the stairs, she embraces me. "I thought you'd never come down," she says, grasping me so tight I can hardly breathe. "I've gotten carried away," I say, quivering, for I feel the spirits vanishing from my head, like crows startled from their haunted tree. "I believe I am terribly sick, Ophelia. I have come down with the summer flu, possibly, but you say the sheriff is here." "He wishes to speak with you," she replies, "about the things you've been doing up in that accursed belfry." "The belfry?" I say, vaguely recalling the place. "But I have only been writing. Very fervently, perhaps. Should this disturb the peace?" "Oh, Claude," she says, crying into my shoulder, "you know not what you do." 7. Sheriff Webb leans in the doorway, despite being offered a chair. He tells me of things I have shouted at passers-by whilst up in my belfry, and I am ashamed. Then he tells me, before the sight of several young women, I removed my clothes, and I am doubly horrified. Furthermore, when he informs me I have threatened children with fates far worse than death, I grow to hate myself. "I perceive you are sick, sir," says the sheriff. "What constitutes your malady I know not. When I first noticed you, I thought you an upright man, a fellow who took pride in his appearance, who commanded himself with magnanimity. Your refurbishing this old church seemed to me a noble project, as only a man of good character may endeavor. Then you took to that perch up yonder," here the sheriff's eyes cast upward in ominous fashion, "and you got carried away. But I believe you are at heart a good man, eccentric but essentially decent, and so long as you promise to remove yourself from that belfry, I grant you your freedom." Gratefully I acquiesce to his request. What a fool I'd be to deny such reasonable advice, particularly with my freedom, not to mention my marriage, teetering on the edge of an abyss. My dear Ophelia, at her own insistence, as she will not allow me access to the belfry, gathers my desk, chair, stationery, and brings them down. Kindly, she sets my writing desk beside the bay window, which looks out on the churchyard. I sit here now with the sun upon my face. Tombstones in their myriad marble moroseness stare at me. My quill feels like a foreign object in my hand. The pages do not fly, the words elusive. My soul feels embedded in mud, like an old forgotten plough. My eyes drift up to the ceiling, the belfry. Oh, things were different in the belfry. Yet, as soon as the thought occurs, I shove it aside. I do not wish to return to that mental state, for it was wholly not me, as if I'd become another person, a madman, a suicide priest. Rather, I shall stick to this garden window, even if I never write another word. 8. As if healing from an injury, I have retired to the divan. Here my wife nurses me. I am unearthly pale, shuddering with fever, and yet slowly I am recovering. My good senses return, although on occasion a terrible panic swoops over my mind like a hideous vampire bat, hearkening to my recent insanity. What on earth brought it all on? That belfry formed a stranglehold upon my character. Your anxiety is to blame, my wife tells me, possibly from our move. You denied yourself time to adjust, and instead threw yourself into your work. I'm glad you are here now, with me in the parlor. I will feed you, bring you books and blankets, provide every comfort. You are my angel and my muse, I reply, and we kiss. 9. The days pass, languid as lava, slow and hot. I snooze in my chair beside the open window. The hydrangeas are in full bloom, and their precious scents do lull me to sleep. My stomach grumbles for food, but it seems Ophelia is preoccupied with some chore or task. I lean back in my chair, resting my head. With a start, I flutter open my eyes. I turn, groggily, and perk my ears toward the ceiling. I hear a chime, a tolling, clear as the sun, but surely it cannot be. Slowly I stand, unsure if I am dreaming, and make my way to the broad staircase. I mount the stairs to the second floor. The tolling grows louder. Undoubtedly, a tintinnabulous tongue claps its casement. I am provoked into an outright run. I throw open the door to the ringer's chamber, where a bell once hung, then climb up the narrow stairs to the trap door and push it upward. The room is silent, empty. Dust motes dance in the sunbeams. What is wrong with me? I inquire, frankly amazed at the power inherent to this belfry. To think that it should wake me from a dead sleep, compel me to race up the stairs, burst into the chamber, only to find someone speaks. I stand half on the stair, half in the room, and now I turn, and behind me a woman stands in the corner. She wears a black suit, with a white collar framing her purple neck. Her blue eyes bulge and blaze, the pupils black as night, expanded with vision. Ophelia, I stammer, half believing the sight. Where did you find those clothes? What on earth are you doing? You like high places, she grins. As do I. 10. I descend into the basement and take up that old church bell, oppressively heavy, impossible to lift by oneself, but Ophelia assists in hefting it up all those stairs, up into the belfry. We derive our brute strength from the sublime, our veracity from visions, and I do believe we receive assistance from a third pair of hands, spectral, invisible, yet grasping all about us. We labor in attaching the bell. First, the establishment of a sturdy yoke or headstock capable of bearing tremendous weight. Then, by means of a hemp rope, the hanging of the bell itself. Thereafter, we fasten an additional double-braided rope designed to fit tightly, oh, deliciously snug, through the pulley and threaded on the wheel. We open the windows to allow the bell's resonance to reach every ear. My love and I have drunk of the highest airs. We embrace, we kiss, now we attach ourselves, leaving open the trap door for our feet to dangle and sway, and together as one we take the leap. Oh, see it now, every man, woman, and child freezing on the street, faces pale as death, hearkening to our delicious tolling of the bell. Together we are two tongues resounding upon one pallet of brass. Sonorously we ring through the town, be our final act a casting out of evil, or a funeral bell, or, moreover, a call to worship. For you, too, may drink this nectar of the gods. The oracle is yours to have, if you shall have it. Do you hear our ghosts say, come and play, up in the dark belfry? The end.
Bravo, sir. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
I'm just like, wow.
Hell yeah.
Definitely amazing.
So glad you came tonight.
Yeah, fantastic. That was really, really written in period. Man, that was really a success. Good job.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We appreciate you, man. That was truly amazing.
Yeah, that was great.
Thank you for writing. Thank you for sharing. And thank you for being Tylor.
Great reading, too. Really fantastic job.
Thanks. Yeah, that 19th century style is just so much fun to write in. Of course, I'm a huge fan. There's so many references to Poe through that, including the word tintinnabulous. That story was just so much fun to write. And when the main character becomes more and more intoxicated with creation, I felt the same thing, which is kind of the best part.
Look, just don't go on any bold threes anytime soon.
I'll try not to.
We'll keep you down on earth for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I write in the basement for a good reason.
All right. See, Ron's got his Deadly Grounds coffee going on.
Nice, very cool. Very cool.
Sir.
Oh dear.
I'm happy to go next if there's no objections.
Oh, certainly. Let's pull you up, sir.
So,
Steve, may I ask for you to turn your mic up because you're very quiet on my end. Everybody else is a normal volume, but yours is way low for some reason.
Is everybody else? Is that true for everybody? Am I low, guys?
You're a
Yeah,
bit
you are a
lower
little
than
bit
everybody
lower.
else.
Oh, okay. Give me a second. The only thing I can turn up is the platform. So hold on 1 second. How is this?
That is beautiful.
That's much better.
Better.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know, Ron. Very cool. Okay, so I am not going to be reading one of my stories tonight. I'm going to be reading from this very fun Valancourt book of Christmas, Victorian Christmas ghost stories. There's a few volumes of this out now, and this is the first one. And for a few years now, my wife and I have read each other Victorian ghost stories on Christmas Eve, trying to bring it back, trying to do a little bit of our part to bring it back, be cool people. So I'm going to read y'all the story that I read this year. It's pretty cool. Liked it a lot, actually, and I think it's a decent length. It's not too long. Some of these just kind of run long. So this is The Doll's Ghost by F. Marion Crawford. It was originally published, let me see here, in the Illustrated London News Christmas Supplement in 1896. So pretty cool. Creepy little tale for you. Okay, here we go. The Doll's Ghost. And I'm reading from an actual book, so it's like bonus points, right? Is that how we work here? It was a terrible accident, and for one moment the splendid machinery of Cranston House got out of gear and stood still. The butler emerged from the retirement in which he spent his elegant leisure. Two grooms of the chambers appeared simultaneously from opposite directions. There were actually housemaids on the grand staircase, and those who remember the facts most exactly assert that Mrs. Pringle herself positively stood upon the landing. Mrs. Pringle was the housekeeper. As for the head nurse, the under-nurse, and the nursery maid, their feelings cannot be described. The head nurse laid one hand upon the polished marble balustrade and stared stupidly before her. The under-nurse stood rigid and pale, leaning against the polished marble wall, and the nursery maid collapsed and sat down on the polished marble step, just beyond the limits of the velvet carpet, and frankly burst into tears. The Lady Gwendolen Lancaster Douglas Scroop, youngest daughter of the ninth Duke of Cranston and aged 6 years and 3 months, picked herself up quite alone and sat down on the third step from the foot of the grand staircase in Cranston House. "Oh," ejaculated the butler, and he disappeared again. "Ah," responded the grooms of the chambers as they also went away. "It's only that doll," Mrs. Pringle was distinctly heard to say in a tone of contempt. The under-nurse heard her say it. Then the 3 nurses gathered round Lady Gwendolen and patted her and gave her unhealthy things out of their pockets and hurried her out of the Cranston house as fast as they could, lest it should be found out upstairs that they had allowed Lady Gwendolen Lancaster Douglas Scroop to tumble down the grand staircase with her doll in her arms. And as the doll was badly broken, the nursery maid carried it, with the pieces wrapped up in Lady Gwendolen's little cloak. It was not far to Hyde Park, and when they had reached a quiet place, they took means to find out that Lady Gwendolen had no bruises, for the carpet was very thick and soft, and there was thick stuff under it to make it softer still. Lady Gwendolen Douglas Scroop sometimes yelled, but she never cried. It was because she had yelled that the nurses had allowed her to go downstairs alone with Nina, the doll, under one arm, while she steadied herself with her other hand on the balustrade and trod upon the polished marble steps beyond the edge of the carpet. So she had fallen, and Nina had come to grief. When the nurses were quite sure that she was not hurt, they unwrapped the doll and looked at her in return. She had been a very beautiful doll, very large and fair and healthy, with real yellow hair and eyelids that would open and shut over very grown-up dark eyes. Moreover, when you moved her right arm up and down, she said, "Papa," and when you moved the left, she said, "Mama," very distinctly. "I heard her say Pa when she fell," said the under-nurse, who heard everything. "But she ought to have said Papa." "That's because her arm went up when she hit the step," said the head nurse. "She'll say the other Pa when I put it down again." "Pa," said Nina, as her right arm was pushed down and speaking through her broken face. It was cracked right across from the upper corner of the forehead with a hideous gash through the nose and down to the little frilled collar of the pale green silk Mother Hubbard frock, and 2 little cornered pieces of porcelain had fallen out. "I'm sure it's a wonder she can speak at all, being all smashed," said the under-nurse. "You'll have to take her to Mr. Puckler," said her superior. "It's not far, and you'd better get going all at once." Lady Gwendolen was occupied in digging a hole in the ground with a little spade, and paid no attention to the nurses. "What are you doing?" inquired the nursery maid, looking on. "Nina's dead, and I'm digging her a grave," replied her ladyship thoughtfully. "Oh, she'll come to life again, all right," said the nursery maid. The under-nurse wrapped Nina up again and departed. Fortunately, a kind soldier, with very long legs and a very small cap, happened to be there, and as he had nothing to do, he offered to see the nurse safely to Mr. Puckler's and back. Mr. Bernard Puckler and his little daughter lived in a little house in a little alley, which led out of a quiet little street not very far from Belgrave Square. He was the great doll doctor, and his extensive practice lay in the most aristocratic quarter. He mended dolls of all sizes and ages, boy dolls and girl dolls, baby dolls in long clothes, and grown-up dolls in fashionable gowns, talking dolls and dumb dolls, those that shut their eyes when they lay down, and those whose eyes had to be shut for them by means of a mysterious wire. His daughter, Elsie, was just over 12 years old, but she was already very clever at mending dolls' clothes, and at doing their hair, which is harder than you might think, though the dolls sit quite still while it's being done. Mr. Puckler had already been a German, but he had dissolved his nationality in the ocean of London many years ago, like great many a foreigner. He still had 1 or 2 German friends, however, who came on Saturday evenings and smoked with him, and played piquet or scat with him for farthing points, and called him Herr Doktor, which seemed to please Mr. Puckler very much. He looked older than he was, for his beard was rather long and ragged, his hair was grizzled and thin, and he wore horn-rimmed spectacles. As for Elsie, she was a thin, pale child, very quiet and neat, with dark eyes and brown hair that was plaited down her back and tied with a bit of black ribbon. She mended the dolls' clothes, and took the dolls back to their homes when they were quite strong again. The house was a little one, but too big for the 2 people who lived in it. There was a small sitting room on the street, and the workshop was at the back, and there were 3 rooms upstairs. But the father and daughter lived most of their time in the workshop, because they were generally at work, even in the evenings. Mr. Puckler laid Nina on the table and looked at her a long time, till the tears began to fill his eyes behind the horn-rimmed spectacles. He was a very susceptible man, and he often fell in love with the dolls he mended, and found it hard to part with them when they had smiled at him for a few days. They were real little people to him, with characters and thoughts and feelings of their own, and he was very tender with them all. But some attracted him especially from the first, and when they were brought to him, maimed and injured, Their state seemed so pitiful to him that the tears came easily. You must remember that he had lived among dolls during a great part of his life and understood them. "How do you know they feel nothing?" he went on to say to Elsie. "You must be gentle with them. It costs nothing to be kind to the little things, and perhaps it makes a difference to them." And Elsie understood him, because she was a child, and she knew that she was more to him than all the dolls. He fell in love with Nina at first sight, perhaps because of her beautiful brown glass eyes were something like Elsie's own, and he loved Elsie first and best with all his heart. And besides, it was a very sorrowful case. Nina had evidently not been long in the world, for her complexion was perfect. Her hair was smooth, or it all should be smooth, and curly, where it should be curly, and her silk clothes were perfectly new. But across her face was that frightful gash, like a saber cut, deep and shadowy within, but all clean and sharp at the edges. When he tenderly pressed her head to close the gaping wound, the edges made a fine grating sound that was painful to hear, and the lids of the dark eyes quivered and trembled as though Nina were suffering dreadfully. "Poor Nina!" he exclaimed sorrowfully. "But I shall not hurt you much, though you will take a long time to get strong." He always asked the names of the broken dolls when they were brought to him, and sometimes the people knew what the children had called them and told him. He liked Nina for a name. Altogether, and in every way, she pleased him more than any other doll he had seen for many years, and he felt drawn to her, and made up his mind to make her perfectly strong and sound, no matter how much labor it cost him. Mr. Puckler worked patiently, a little at a time, and Elsie watched him. She could do nothing for poor Nina, whose clothes needed no mending. The longer the doll doctor worked, the more fond he became of the yellow hair and the beautiful brown glass eyes. He sometimes forgot all the other dolls that were waiting to be mended, lying side by side on a shelf, and sat for an hour gazing at Nina's face. When he racked his ingenuity for some invention by which to hide even the smallest trace of the terrible accident. She was wonderfully mended. Even he was obliged to admit that, but the scar was still visible to his keen eyes, a very fine line right across the face, downwards from right to left. Yet all the conditions had been most favorable for a cure, since the cement had set quite hard at the first attempt, and the weather had been fine and dry, which makes a great difference in a doll's hospital. At last he knew that he could do no more, and the under-nurse had already come twice to see whether the job was finished, as she coarsely expressed it. "Nina is not quite strong yet," Mr. Puckler had answered each time, for he could not make up his mind to face the parting. And now he sat before the square deal table at which he worked, and Nina lay before him for the last time with a big brown paper box beside her. It stood there like a coffin, waiting for her, he thought. He must put her into it, and lay tissue paper over her dear face, and then put on the lid, and at the thought of tying the string, his sight was dim and with tears again. He was never to look into the glassy depths of the beautiful brown eyes any more, nor to hear the little wooden voice say, "Papa," and "Mama." It was a very painful moment. In the vain hope of gaining time before the separation, he took up the little sticky bottles of cement and glue and gum and color, looking at each one in turn, and then at Nina's face. And all his small tools lay there, neatly arranged in a row, but he knew that he could not use them again for Nina. She was quite strong at last, and in a country where there should be no cruel children to hurt her, she might live 100 years, with only that almost imperceptible line across her face to tell of the fearful thing that had befallen her on the marble steps of Cranston House. Suddenly, Mr. Puckler's heart was quite full, and he rose abruptly from his seat and turned away. "Elsie," he said unsteadily, "you must do it for me. I cannot bear to see her go inside the box." So he went and stood at the window with his back turned, while Elsie did what he had not the heart to do. "Is it done?" he asked, not turning around. "Then take her away, my dear. Put on your hat and take her to Cranston House quickly, and when you are gone I will turn around." Elsie was used to her father's queer ways with the dolls, and though she had never seen him so much moved by a parting, she was not so much surprised. "Come back quickly," he said, when he heard her hand on the latch. "It is growing late, and I should not send you out at this hour, but I could not bear to look forward to it any more." When Elsie was gone, he left the window and sat down at his place before the table again, to wait for the child to come back. He touched the place where Nina had lain, very gently, and he recalled the softly tinted pink face and the glass eyes and the ringlets of yellow hair, till he could almost see them. The evenings were long, for it was late in the spring, but it began to grow dark soon, and Mr. Puckler wondered why Elsie did not come back. She had been gone an hour and a half, and that was much longer than he had expected, for it was barely half a mile from Belgrave Square to Cranston House. He reflected that the child might have been kept waiting, but as the twilight deepened, he grew anxious and walked up and down the dim workshop, no longer thinking of Nina, but Elsie, his own living child whom he loved. An undefinable, disquieting sensation came upon him by fine degrees, a chillness and a faint stirring of his thin hair, joined with a wish to be in any company rather than to be alone any much longer. It was the beginning of fear. He told himself in strong German English that he was a foolish old man, and he began to feel about for the matches in the dusk. He knew just where they should be, for he always kept them in the same place, close to the little tin box that held bits of sealing wax of various colors, for some kinds of mending. But somehow he could not find the matches in the gloom. Somehow something had happened to Elsie, he was sure, and as his fear increased, he felt as though it might be allayed if he could get a little light and see what time it was. Then he called himself a foolish old man again, and the sound of his own voice startled him in the dark. He could not find the matches. The window was gray still. He might see what time it was if he went close to it, and he could go and get matches out of the cupboard afterwards. He stood back from the table to get out of the way of the chair, and began to cross the board floor. Something was following him in the dark. There was a small pattering, as of tiny feet upon the boards. He stopped and listened, and the roots of his hair tingled. It was nothing, and he was a foolish old man. He made 2 steps more, and he was sure that he heard the little pattering again. He turned his back to the window, leaning against the sash so that the panes began to crack, and he faced the dark. Everything was quite still, and it smelt of paste and cement and wood filings as usual. "Is that you, Elsie?" he asked, and he was surprised by the fear in his voice. There was no answer in the room, and he held up his watch and tried to make out what time it was by the gray dusk that was not darkness. So far as he could see, it was within 2 or 3 minutes of 10 o'clock. He had been a long time alone. He was shocked and frightened for Elsie out in London so late, and he almost ran across the room to the door. As he fumbled for the latch, he distinctly heard the running of little feet after him. "Mice!" he exclaimed feebly, just as he got the door open. He shut it quickly behind him, and felt as though some cold thing had settled on his back and were writhing upon him. The passage was quite dark, but he found his hat and was out in the alley in a moment, breathing more freely and surprised to find out how much light there could still be in the open air. He could see the pavement clearly under his feet, and far off in the street to which the alley led, he could hear the laughter and calls of children playing some game out of doors. He wondered how he could have been so nervous, and for an instant he thought of going back into the house to wait quietly for Elsie. But instantly he felt that nervous fright out of something stealing over him again. In any case, it was better to walk up to Cranston House and ask the servants about the child. One of the women had perhaps taken a fancy to her, and was even now giving her tea and cake. He walked quickly to Belgrave Square, and then up the broad streets, listening as he went. Whenever there was no other sound for the tiny footsteps. But he heard nothing, and was laughing at himself when he rang the servant's bell at the big old house. Of course the child must be there. The person who opened the door was quite an inferior person, for it was a back door, but affected the manners of the front, and stared at Mr. Puckler superciliously under the strong light. No little girl had been seen, and he knew nothing about no dolls. "She is my little girl." I screwed up the accent. "She's my little girl," said Mr. Puckler, tremulously, for all his anxiety was returning tenfold. "And I am afraid something has happened." The inferior person said rudely that nothing could have happened to her in that house, because she's not been there, which was a jolly good reason why. And Mr. Puckler was obliged to admit that the man ought to know, as it was his business to keep the door and let people in. He wished to be allowed to speak to the under-nurse, who knew him, but the man was ruder than ever, and finally shut the door in his face. When the doll doctor was alone in the street, he steadied himself by the railing, for he felt as though he were breaking in two, just as some dolls break in the middle of the backbone. Presently he knew that he must be doing something. He must be doing something to find Elsie, and that gave him strength. He began to walk as quickly as he could through the streets, following every highway and byway which his little girl might have taken on her errand. He also asked several policemen in vain if they had seen her, and most of them answered him kindly, for they saw he was a sober man and in his right senses, and some of them had little girls of their own. It was 1 o'clock in the morning when he went up to his door again, worn out and hopeless and broken-hearted. As he turned the key in the lock, his heart stood still, for he knew that he was awake and not dreaming, and that he really heard those tiny footsteps pattering to meet him inside the house along the passage. But he was too unhappy to be much frightened any more, and his heart went on again with a dull, regular pain that ground its way up through him with every pulse. So he went in and hung up his hat in the dark, and found the matches in the cupboard and the candlestick in its place in the corner. Mr. Puckler was so much overcome and so completely worn out that he sat down in his chair before the work-table and almost fainted, as his face dropped forward and upon his folded hands. Beside him, the solitary candle burned steadily with a low flame in the still warm air. "Elsie! Elsie!" he groaned against his yellow knuckles. And that was all he could say, and it was no relief to him. On the contrary, the very sound of the name was a new and sharp pain that pierced his ears and his head and his very soul. For every time he repeated the name, it meant that little Elsie was dead, somewhere out in the streets of London, in the dark. He was so terribly hurt that it did not even feel something pulling gently at the skirt of his old coat, so gently that it was like the nibbling of a tiny mouse. He might have thought that it really was a mouse if he had noticed it. "Elsie, Elsie," he groaned right against his hands. Then a cool breath stirred his thin hair, and the low flame of the one candle dropped down to almost a mere spark, not flickering as though a draught were going to blow it out, but just dropping down as if it were tired out. Mr. Puckler felt his hands stiffening with fright under his face, and there was a faint rustling sound, like some small silk thing blown in a gentle breeze. He sat up straight, stark and scared, and a small wooden voice spoke in the stillness. "Papa," it said, with a break between the syllables. Mr. Puckler stood up in a single jump, and his chair fell over backwards with a smashing noise upon the wooden floor. The candle had almost gone out. It was Nina's doll voice that had spoken, and he should have known it among the voices of 100 other dolls, and yet there was something more in it, a little human ring, with a pitiful cry and a call for help, and the wail of a hurt child. Mr. Puckler stood up, stark and stiff, and tried to look around, but at first he could not, for he seemed to be frozen from head to foot. Then he made a great effort, and he raised one hand to each of his temples and pressed his own head round as he would have turned a doll's. The candle was burning so low that it might as well have been out altogether for any light it gave, and the room seemed quite dark at first. Then he saw something. He would not have believed that he could have been more frightened than he had been just before that, but he was, and his knees shook, for he saw the doll standing in the middle of the floor, shining with a faint and ghostly radiance, her beautiful glassy brown eyes fixed on his, and across her face the very thin line of the break he had mended, as though it were drawn in light with a fine point of white flame. Yet there was something more in the eyes, too. There was something human, like Elsie's own, but as if only the doll saw him through them, and not Elsie. And there were enough of Elsie to bring back all his pain, and to make him forget his fear. "Elsie, my little Elsie!" he cried aloud. The small ghost moved, and its doll arm slowly rose and fell with a stiff, mechanical motion. "Papa," it said. It seemed this time there was even more of Elsie's tone, echoing somewhere between the wooden notes that reached his ears so distinctly and yet so far away. Elsie was calling to him, he was sure. His face was perfectly white in the gloom, but his knees did not shake any more, and he felt that he was less frightened. "Yes, child, but where? Where?" he asked. "Where are you, Elsie?" "Papa." The syllables died away in the quiet room. There was a low rustling of silk. The glassy brown eyes turned slowly away, and Mr. Puckler heard the pitter-patter of the small feet in the bronze kid slippers as the figure ran straight to the door. Then the candle burned high again. The room was full of light, and he was alone. Mr. Puckler passed his hand over his eyes and looked about him. He could see everything quite clearly, and he felt that he must have been dreaming, though he was standing instead of sitting down, and he should have been if he had just woken up. The candle burned brightly now. There were the dolls to be mended, lying in a row with their toes up. The third one had lost her right shoe, and Elsie was making one. He knew that, and he was certainly not dreaming now. He had not been dreaming when he had come in from his fruitless search, and had heard the doll's footsteps running to the door. He had not fallen asleep in his chair. How could he possibly have fallen asleep when his heart was breaking? He had been awake all the time. He steadied himself, set the fallen chair upon its legs, and said to himself again very emphatically that he was a foolish old man. He ought to be out in the streets, looking for his child, asking questions, and inquiring at the police stations, where all accidents were reported as soon as they were known, or at least at the hospitals. "Papa." The longing, wailing, pitiful little wooden cry rang from the passage outside the door, and Mr. Puckler stood for an instant with white face, transfixed and rooted to the spot. A moment later his hand was on the latch. Then he was in the passage, with the light streaming from the open door behind him. Quite at the other end, he saw the little phantom shining clearly in the shadow, and the right hand seemed to beckon to him as the arm rose and fell once more. He knew all at once that it had not come to frighten him, but to lead him, and when it had disappeared, he walked boldly toward the door. He knew that it was in the street outside, waiting for him. He forgot that he was all tired and had not eaten supper, and he had walked many miles, for a sudden hope ran through him, like a golden stream of life. And sure enough, at the corner of the alley, and at that corner of the street, and out in Belgrave Square, he saw the small ghost flitting before him. Sometimes it was only a shadow, where there was other light, but then the glare of the lamps made a pale green sheen on its little Mother Hubbard frock of silk, and sometimes, where the streets were dark and silent, the whole figure shone out brightly, with its yellow curls and rosy neck. It seemed to trot along like a tiny child, and Mr. Puckler could almost hear the pattering of the bronze kid slippers out on the pavement as it ran. But it went very fast, and he could only just keep up with it, tearing along with his hat on the back of his head, and his thin hair blown along by the night breeze, and his horn-rimmed spectacles firmly set upon his broad nose. On and on he went, and he had no idea where he was going. He did not even care, for he knew certainly that he was going the right way. Then at last, in a wide, quiet street, he was standing before a big, sober-looking door that had 2 lamps on each side of it and a polished brass bell handle, which he pulled. And just inside, when the door was opened, in the bright light there was the little shadow and the pale green sheen of the little silk dress, and once more the small cry came to his ears, less pitiful, more longing, "Papa!" The shadow turned suddenly bright, and out of the brightness the beautiful brown glass eyes were turned up happily to his, while the rosy mouth smiled so divinely that the phantom doll looked almost like a little angel just then. "A little girl was brought in soon after 10 o'clock, said the quiet voice of the hospital doorkeeper. I think they thought she was only stunned. She was holding a big brown paper box against her, and they could not get it out of her arms. She had a long plait of brown hair that hung down as they carried her." "She is my little girl," said Mr. Puckler. But he hardly heard his own voice. He leaned over Elsie's face in the gentle light of the children's ward, and when he stood there a minute, the beautiful brown eyes opened and looked up to his. "Papa!" cried Elsie softly. "I knew you would come." Then Mr. Puckler did not know what he did or said for a moment, and what he felt was worth all the fear and terror and despair that had almost killed him that night. But by and by Elsie was telling her story, and the nurse let her speak, for there were only 2 other children in the room who were getting well and were sound asleep. "There were big boys with bad faces," said Elsie, "and they tried to get Nina away from me, but I held on and fought as well as I could till one of them hit me with something, and I don't remember any more, for I tumbled down, and I suppose the boys ran away, and somebody found me there, but I'm afraid Nina is all smashed." "Here is the box," said the nurse. "We could not take it out of her arms until she came to herself. Should you like to see if the doll is broken?" And she undid the string cleverly, but Nina was all smashed to pieces. Only the gentle light of the children's ward made a pale green sheen in the folds of the little Mother Hubbard's frock. That's actually the end. I thought there was more.
Good job, sir.
Thanks.
I had been, we have an extra Raz. I don't know which Raz is Raz, so I'm going to leave it there for a second. But, there's Raz. Okay. I'd been interested. I'd been looking at that book actually today to see. So is it a good book to purchase, Steve?
Yeah, I mean it's one of those things, right? It's historical, so it's fun. I mean, like, they're actual Victorian stories. They're written in the actual period, and they're not all classics. They're ones that, like, you probably haven't read. So Yeah, I think so. There's I have the first 2 volumes of the series, and I have enjoyed most of what I've read. But even if I don't love the story, I love the historical component of it, and I love that I'm ingesting history. Like I feel the same thing about old movies. Like I don't know, I just love that aspect of it no matter what. So for me, it's always fun. So yeah, I I uh, I would recommend it. Sure,
Cool.
that's your bag.
Well, it is. So there you go.
There you go.
Mm,
Some feedback. There we go. Sorry about that.
that's okay. All right. Are we all set to go here?
Yep.
I believe. Okay.
I sound.
You got a bit of an echo going.
Oh, I can fix that. Hold on. How's that? Any better?
Yeah, that seems better.
Okay, good. Good. All right.
All right. Moving on to Raz.
My annual reading of The Raven. Let's see. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded, nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Ah, distinctly I remember, it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken satin certain, rustling of each purple curtain thrilled me, filled me with fantastic terror never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. Some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This it is and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or madam, truly your forgiveness I implore. But the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping in my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you. Here I opened wide the door. Darkness there, nothing more. Deep into that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word, "Lenore." This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word "Lenore." Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my souls within me burning, soon again I heard a tapping, somewhat louder than before. "Surely," said I, "surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart be still a moment, and this mystery explore. 'Tis the wind, and nothing more." Open here I flung the shutter, when many a flirt and flutter, and there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not a minute stopped or stayed he, but within mien of lord or lady perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. "Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou," I said, "art sure no craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven, wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore." Quoth the raven, "Nevermore." Much I marveled this ungainly, thou to hear discourse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpted bust above his chamber door, with such a name as Nevermore. But the raving, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, "Other friends have flown before. On the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before." Then the bird said, "Nevermore." Startled at the stillness, broken by replies so aptly spoken, doubtless said I, what it utters is its shock. I'm sorry, it's its only stock in store. Caught from son and happy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his songs one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope the melancholy burden bore. Of never, nevermore. But the raven sat beguiling on my fancy into smiling. Straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of bird and bust and door. Then, upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking, what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt, and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er. But whose velvet lining with the lamplight gloating o'er she shall press, nevermore. Then methought the air grew denser, perfumed with an unseen censer, swung by seraphim whose footfalls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch, I cried, thy God hath lent thee, by these angels he hath sent thee, respite and nepenthe from thy memories of Lenore. Quaff, O quaff, this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore. Desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert island enchanted, on this home by horror haunted, tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, thing of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by the God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow laden, if, within the distant Adam, it shall clasp a saint and maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Lenore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word our sign of parting, bitter fiend, I shrieked, upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul hath spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken. Quit the bust above my door. Take thy beak from out my heart and take thy form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never flitting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming, that was a bad mess up. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws a shadow on the floor. And my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted, nevermore. Man. Until I said semen, that was a great one.
Till that part, but yeah. Tosker's like, yeah, good job.
Not one of my better ones, that's for sure. But it's tradition.
Great job, man.
Thanks.
Get the yearly raven in. What's funny is that I have my Nevermore lighter going on right now.
Mine finally ran out of juice, man.
My nephew got me another one, so when this one runs out, I have that to fall back on. But yeah, I'm a little.
You're right, for a second.
And it's mentioned in the comments by Tylor, great accent, Steve, when you were doing yours as well.
Oh, thanks.
You done good. So do we have Ron or Friday next?
Which do you prefer, Ron?
Let Friday go next.
Okay.
I feel like she never really gets a chance to speak, and she's always there quiet listening to everybody else. So I want to see what she's come up with.
This is true. Okay. All right. Friday.
I missed part of the memo. I got the ghost story part. I did not get the Victorian part. So I did not join the club properly, but I can promise a ghost story. Miss Sarah Vinson and Miss Mallow. Friday was walking up the hill of Railroad Street and around its curve to Higdon Street to circle the block again. Being the weird kid who saw ghosts made life boring at times. No one wanted to be friends or hang out. She made it to Higdon Street and heard a set of familiar voices. She looked to the right to see Miss Sarah Vinson and Miss Mallow talking in front of the haunted house on the hill, where the watching woman never left. Miss Mallow had her head on Miss Sarah Vinson's shoulder, which confirmed her suspicions about their after school hours relationship. Gave her hope about her life getting better as she grew older. She hoped to find a friend too. She quietly walked over and stood next to them. No, I don't think she ever leaves the house. She seems to walk around inside or stare out the window. Miss Sarah Vinson seemed to be replying to her friend's question. No, ma'am. She has not come out the whole 12 years I have lived here or the 34 years my dad has. She passed away sometime before 1976 is all I know. I confirmed for her. They both looked startled that I appeared out of nowhere for them. Thank you, Friday. Can you tell us who the new little girl playing at the two-story house on Railroad Street is? Miss Sarah Vinson asked, pointing to the only two-story house on the block. She couldn't help the tears that fell. My little sister Selma. She was the one who was run over by the train. Miss Mallow gave Friday a big hug. Her touch was so cold. I am so sorry that happened to you and your family. The administrator did not tell the whole school staff about who and what happened. Your parents asked to keep it out of the paper. We were preparing for the Spooky Tour field trip, and we will leave that house off our list. Miss Mallow promised as she looked at Friday's tear-filled eyes. Friday found someone who could see the ghost, too. She smiled as she wiped her eyes and face. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being willing to talk with me about it first. Friday began to wonder if Miss Mallow was one, too. No one acknowledged her presence at school or smiled back when she smiled at them. What do you know about the first girl? Miss Mallow smiled at her. Emma, the original ghost in the house. She says she was born in 1923. She remembers being 9 when she passed. She doesn't remember how, but she remembers being lonely for a long time. That's why she tricked my sister during their Marco Polo game. Friday explained to her teacher and her teacher's friend. Thank you, Friday. Do you know her last name? Miss Saracen asked as she wrote down notes on her flowery journal. Ownby, Friday answered. Thank you. Would you mind walking the circle with us to tell us about what you know about any of the spirits here? Miss Sarvinson requested. It would be nice to talk to somebody about them that can see them too, Friday shrugged. If my mom calls, I have to go. The lady smiled at her and nodded in agreement. Can you tell us anything about the lady on the track? Miss Mallow asked. Thanks for the reminder, Carol. Yes, please, Friday. Miss Saracen beamed. She just goes up and down the tracks, train or not. She doesn't speak or acknowledge anyone. Friday explained her observations. Miss Saracen wrote down this new information on her notepad. Both ladies turned to face the house on the hill. They all stared at the lady staring at them through the window, always watching quietly. Miss Mallow glanced at Friday. What about her? That's all she ever does, just watching those passing by the house. She feels angry and sad. I used to take dares to go up there. She sighed deeply as she put up a mental wall like her dad taught her to do. I don't want to bother her. I don't understand enough to help release her from whatever's holding her there. She wished her dad was home to help with these explanations. Long haul trucking kept him away so much he would get a kick out of Miss Mallow. She had never met anyone who does what she is doing. They usually stay where they pass. Miss Servinson made more notes and explained, she is Tammy Barnes. Her husband took her life over rumors he found were untrue after her death. Friday finally understood. Let's walk this way. She motioned to the left down Back Valley Road. I can show you the route I am allowed to walk. The kudzu and honeysuckle had joined the trees in their transition into autumn. The evening chill was starting to hit as they began their walk towards Hotwater Road. Is there a reason you keep to yourself at school? Miss Servinson asked. I am the weird kid. No one talks to me for one reason or another because I am different. I don't know why, Freddie explained sadly. You didn't start the scuffle earlier. She smiled at her student. He decided I wasn't allowed to use the monkey bars. That's the whole reason I come to school half an hour early. He didn't expect that my dad taught me how to fight, she explained as they passed more houses. It seemed pretty out of character for you to give a bloody nose and two black eyes to anyone's. Miss Saracen nodded appreciatively. Friday looked at the house at the corner of Back Valley Road and Hotwater Road. There was an old man sitting on the porch rocking. He was covered in grease, dirt, and blood. Wait a tick! He's still here? Is that the old junk guy that got hit by the train? Miss Servinson explained. It never occurred to her that he would stay behind. Friday started leading the ladies down Hotwater Road towards the train tracks. With no want to go up the mountain, she led them towards Brown Road, just 4 houses down. That is Christopher and Amara Renfield's house. Mr. Redfield figured he could make it or something. I don't know. He and his old truck full of junk get hit full force with the train. The engineer couldn't do anything with no warning. He stays with his wife. He loves her more than anything. 4 houses down, they turned on Brown's Road and stopped for Miss Saracen write more notes about the man she only heard rumors about. They say he's a mean old man that haunts her and drives her crazy. Miss Amara is only as crazy as my granny. He would never hurt her. He loves her. Friday tried to explain on their behalf. It bothered her the bad things people are saying about those nice friends of her granny. The love and relationship they have even after his death is something she hopes for. Thank you for clearing that up for us. I will defend them just as passionately as you are, Miss Sarah Vincent said. They both realized Miss Mallow was staring at the church down towards the end of Brown's Road, nearly at the dead end. A continuous line of spirits were coming in and out of the church. It seemed to have a glow near the back of the church. Why is there a portal in a church? Miss Saracen sounded horrified. Friday held up a finger and walked farther down the road. Miss Barnaby's dachshunds were let out. 7 curious dogs barking at the trio made for hard conversation. They walked a few houses down and stopped in front of the red-built brick building. As they stood in front of the church, Friday explained what she understood. A special group of people keep watch of this place. I don't think they know why. It's like a revolving door at the clinic with spirits and things. I don't know what they are. The people who come here don't notice. Reverend Devlin is the only one who is always here. He's the nicest reverend in town. They stood for a few minutes and watched the church. I didn't know this church was even here. I'm learning so much about this town. I'm as I get as this town getting ready for this little field trip. What's the name of this street? Miss Servison observed. Brown's Road, ma'am. She answered her teacher. Let's go to the last haunted house I can show you. My house. They were quiet as they walked back to Hot Rudder Road. The ladies continued straight across the street and hopped across the ditch. They walked past the chain link fence into the yard. As they passed the playhouse on stands with the slide, an older lady came out onto the concrete porch of the White House. That's Grandma Bobby. She is passed way before I was born. She still teaches me and my sisters different things, she explained. I wondered about her. She waves at us as we go home up the mountain. We live just past the second curve. Miss Saracen pointed towards the curve they could see from her yard. Freddie's mom rushed out of the house to see the owners of the voices in the yard. Miss Saracen, welcome to our home. I didn't know you were coming over for a visit. Miss Looney, your wonderful daughter, gave us a tour round the circle here. She gestured towards the roads in a circle motion. I just moved up the street and took a walk today. Freddie glanced at the smiling Miss Wallow. She winked at Friday. The ladies followed Miss Looney into the house. Oh, that's wonderful. Come on inside and have some lemon cake and coffee. Your spirit friend is welcome too. Mom doesn't seem to have a problem with her. Their eyes went wide in surprise. Very few could see Miss Mallow. The end.
I, I'm assuming from the stories that you've told us about where you grew up that a number of these ghosts are ones that you are personally aware of and learned about in your hometown.
Yeah, a lot of these are actually very real. These places are very real. I just added a couple so Friday would have something in there from her family.
For those of you who aren't aware, it was Saudi Daisy where all that took place, where she grew up. It was very normal for them to learn about ghosts and to go to the cemeteries and stuff in school. It was just the whole town was very all about their undead or dead,
Yeah,
or however you
we had
wish to phrase it.
there were
So
many churches and many cemeteries, and we had to learn about the history. And we had a ghost tour. We'd go to the cemetery and we'd do rubbings to find out about different people, and then we'd go study the people from the rubbings in the library.
That's fascinating. I'm sorry. One more time. What was the name of the town that you grew up in, Friday?
Saudi Daisy, Tennessee.
Okay.
yeah, we get cool stories.
I just hope nobody's mad that it's not Victorian.
Not at all.
We'll give you a pass.
Look
this
at
time.
Raz. He's so mad. Look at him. Look how mad he is. Look at those eyebrows.
Red Oscar's like, oh God, drink some more. It was Victorian. Oh.
Raz, you're muted, buddy.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had an angry face. I was so angry I couldn't unmute myself correctly.
All right. So last up before we have a little round of chatter, is Ron. Ron, are you ready?
If I have no choice.
You have no choice.
Okay,
At
then I
all.
guess I'm ready.
Okay.
All right. So I too, like Jenny, also did not get the memo that it should be Victorian. And even if I had gotten the memo, I am not entirely certain that I would have chosen a Victorian story, because this episode seems to be the perfect time for me to read a story on here that I have not yet read on an Owlite Society. And Jenny will probably be happy for this one. I have said in the past that this is a very hard story for me to read because I have a hard time reading it without actually crying myself. It is my story, A Christmas Wish, out of the book that you see shown behind me here, Inside My Nightmares. It's the first story in the book. That is the one that I would like to read and see if I can actually do it without crying. But first, let me get into character here. Since we were just after Christmas, A Christmas Wish. It's really hard to resist the temptation to make them when you're lying face up in 8 inches of snow, staring at a pale blue sky, cloudless, just fresh after the previous night's snowfall. It was my favorite spot. It was a small clearing at the end of our driveway. Mainly I used it to rake the leaves into during the fall, but today it was my own personal snow globe. I lie there with the snow piled up around me, the snow around my head creating a peaceful silence as it muffled out the rest of the world. Each slight move I made intensified the crunch of the snow in my ears. I love that sound. The clearing was in a natural grotto between 2 banks of trees. One had fallen long ago on one side of the grotto, making it the perfect bench. During the summer, when there was no snow, I would come out here to read my favorite books. Today, the log was covered and barely visible. Today, I was covered and barely visible. I could fall asleep here. Mom says you need to finish chopping the rest of the firewood or you're not going to the mall. Or not. It was the voice of my big sister, Lucy. Her voice invaded my tranquility worse than nails on a chalkboard. Joey, you hear me, retard? Mom said, I heard you. I cut her off. I heaved a deep sigh. The snow crunched in my ears. I'm on it, I said reluctantly. Not with any great speed or enthusiasm. I pulled myself out of my man-made angel of the winter, being careful not to disturb its perfection. Contrary to what my mom and sister might believe, I actually do not mind chopping firewood. It is, out of all the chores I am tasked with, my favorite one. I love the smell of the wood, the satisfying crack when the wood splits, the weight of the axe, and the sense of power it brings, being in control of such a dangerous tool. Hardly something you would expect an 11-year-old to be responsible with, but if not me, who else? The thought brought about a fleeting moment of melancholy. Attached to it was a memory. All right, sport, you're the man of the house while I'm gone, okay? So you have to take care of mommy, okay? I shook my head yes, but my eyes were filled with tears. That means you have to be responsible and do your chores, clean your room, do the dishes, chop the firewood, like I showed you. Can you do that for me, sport? Again, I shook my head yes. But Daddy, when will you be back? I hope to be back by Christmas. Don't worry. It'll be here sooner than you know. You promise? I did not try to hold back the tears. I let them flow. I promise, he said. Hey, retard, you done yet? Again, that excruciating voice snapped me back from my memory. Yeah, I'm just finishing up. Without turning the facer, I choked down the tears that had suddenly welled up, wiped my face on my sleeve, and brought the axe down one more time, lodging it into the stump I had been using to prop up the wood pieces. Let's go, I said. I brushed past her without making eye contact. The mall was crowded as usual for this time of year. We had split to go our separate ways so we could shop in privacy. I'm going to see Santa, I had said, which brought a sneer from my sister's lips. Grow up, she said. You're 11 years old. Now, Lucy, Mom had interjected, if he wants to go see Santa, I think that's great. At least he's trying to get into the Christmas spirit, Miss Mopey Pants. You could do it with the touch of the Christmas spirit yourself. I smiled inwardly at this, my sister being admonished. Though I didn't feel much in the way of the Christmas spirit, I let her believe whatever she wanted to believe. My sister harumphed. I wish Dad were here, was all she said. Mom looked as if about to say something, but then thought better of it and quickly changed the topic. All right, you both better cheer up now. You both have your money. Everyone knows what time we're meeting back here, right? If you're good, then maybe I'll buy us all hot chocolate on the way home. How does that sound? She did her best to put a smile on it. I'm down for hot chocolate, I said, hoping to lighten the situation. Lucy kept quiet. Good, said Mom without missing a beat. I'll meet you back here at 3. With that, we split up. The line to Santa was not very long, as it was still early in the afternoon. As I fell in line with my hands in my pockets, I tried to shut out the screaming babies and the cacophonous hubbub of the mall shoppers. From all sides, cheerful Christmas music played. I hate Christmas music. It's the same 6 songs over and over again, done in different ways by different artists. There's only so many times you can hear Silent Night before you wish they would shut up so you could actually have one. And poor Rudolph, a victim of discrimination and bullying, no self-confidence, couldn't stand up for himself. And then Santa said, "Hey, Rudolph, I have a job for you." And did Rudolph get an ego? Nope. He stayed as humble as ever. Instead of prancing around like he was suddenly big reindeer on campus or the North Pole, whatever. The point is, I hate Christmas music. You're next. My mind was ripped from images of Rudolph opening up on the reindeer community with an Uzi. What? I said, looking around. You're next to see Santa. It was some girl dressed in an elf costume. She looked about as thrilled to be here as a porcupine is to be combed, which is to say, not much. Oh, I replied, thanks. I ascended the 3 short steps to Santa's rather girthy lap. Most guys use a pillow to achieve the look. This imposter had it all natural. I looked up at the phony beard, the glassless spectacles. "And what's your name, little one?" he asked in an overbearing, cheerful tone that was about as real as professional wrestling. I think his garlic breath did far more damage than any wrestling move. I played along. "Joey," I responded. "And Joey, what would you like for Christmas?" His hand on my back was unnerving, but his smile never wavered. Neither did his garlic breath. My head swam. I swallowed. I couldn't keep eye contact. "I want my father to come back from Afghanistan." Santa looked confused. "Oh," he floundered for words. Then he gestured to the elf. She approached and motioned for me to come with her. I looked at Santa one last time, knowing he was just a guy in a Santa suit. "I'll see what I can do," was all he said. I was silent on the car ride home. Mom did stop for hot chocolate, and I sipped mine carefully as I looked out the window at the winter wonderland passing by. Every house was decorated with lights and a Christmas tree shining brightly in the front window. Then we turned off the main road onto the little dirt road that led to our house. The houses here were less visible, surrounded by trees or high hedgerows. I couldn't see the houses, but I had no doubt they were decorated just as festively as well. Then we pulled up the long incline of a driveway to our house. It was visible from the road, but there were no lights adorning it. Sure, we had a tree that was decorated and lit, but no lights outside. That had been the one rule Mom had been persistent on. She would not allow an 11-year-old to climb up on the roof. Mom was afraid of heights. She projected that fear onto me, so we went without lights. That's okay. We didn't see much traffic out this far anyway. No visitors, no one to appreciate the hard work and effort it takes to display how much you're getting into the Christmas spirit. If only Dad were here. Inside the house, I set about the task of wrapping the presents I had acquired for my family. I was lying on my bed, twirling the scissors around my index finger when Mom walked in. "Hey, sport, you done?" "Yeah, just finished." I sat up to make room for her to sit. "Let's see how you did." I handed her a neatly wrapped package in shiny red paper and ensconced in a silver ribbon. "This one is for you," I said. "Oh, what is it?" she said, smiling. "Guess you'll have to wait to find out," I replied. I picked up another present. This one had Hello Kitty wrapping paper. "This one's for Lucy." "That's pretty. Can I know what it is?" "No, because then you'll tell her." "No, I won't. I promise." I pretended to think about it. "All right. It's a set of glow-in-the-dark fairies. You put them around your room, and the fairies are supposed to protect you while you sleep." Mom seemed pleased. "Wow, that's really thoughtful. That's a very special gift. She'll love them." "And this one," I said, picking up another, "is for Dad." I didn't bother to put it in a box. It was wrapped in a cartoonish camouflage pattern of brown and tan decorated with silly animated cactuses wearing cowboy hats. The wrapping did nothing to disguise its form. It was a round, flat disc about 10 inches in diameter and cupped under one side. It was the universally recognized shape of a frisbee. Mom tried to speak, but tears welled up in her eyes and she choked back a sob. Rather than say anything, she just grabbed me and hugged me. Though she made no sound, I could tell she was crying against my shoulder. I awoke for some reason. There was a presence in my room. I raised my head up to look. "Relax, sport. It's just me." It was the familiar voice of my father, tall, handsome, still wearing his military uniform. The sharp lines of its creases contrasted his silhouette against my nightlight. "Dad!" I exclaimed, immediately jumping up and hugging him. "I've missed you. I missed you too, son." "When did you get in?" I asked. "Just now." He said, "It was a long trip." I looked at the clock. It was just after 3 in the morning. "Does Mom know you're here?" I asked. "Just going to see her now. It's late. You should get some sleep. Big day tomorrow." "I knew you'd come back," I said. "I made you a promise, didn't I?" I lay back down. "I love you, Dad," I said, and before I closed my eyes, I saw him fade against the darkness out of my room. "I love you too, son," I heard him say. I tried to go back to sleep, but my heart was racing. I was too excited. I knew it would be impossible at this point. Quietly, I got up and slid on my robe. It was warm in the house, but for some reason I felt excitedly cold. I was shivering as I walked barefooted down the stairs to my parents' bedroom. The door was slightly open and a dim light was managing to escape into the hallway. I peered through the gap and saw Mom sitting alone on the side of the bed. She was crying. I stepped through the door. "Mom," I said, "are you okay?" She said nothing but gestured me over to sit with her. As I got closer, I could see a piece of paper on her lap. It was stained with tears. As I sat down next to her, the paper slid to the floor. Neither she nor I bothered to pick it up. I knew what it said. I had seen it 100 times before. I knew the words on it by heart. "Your husband died in the line of duty, in keeping with the highest standards and traditions of the Army and of his country, which he served so nobly and well. I hope that it will alleviate your sorrow just a little when I tell you that no man could have done more to help bring an early end to this crusade for human freedom. He was a soldier and a man. Both officers and men of his unit miss him greatly, but his courageous example in making the supreme sacrifice has given all of us additional strength to complete the unfinished task before us." This time she made no attempt to mask the sounds as we sat there hugging each other tightly. "Wake up, retard, it's Christmas." It had taken some time to fall asleep after visiting Mom that night, and now the power drill voice of my sister dug into my brain like a tick digs into flesh. "Honestly, Lucy, it's Christmas," I said, exasperated. "Can't you give it a rest with the retard bit for at least a day?" She pounced heavily on the edge of my bed, disrupting my comfort further. "Nope. Wake up, retard. Aunt Patty and Uncle Bobby are here. They brought presents." I sighed, defeated. "All right, I'm up." She bounded out of the room, slamming the door loudly behind her. The sound recoiled through my already weary brain, causing me to cringe. As much as I wanted to roll over and go back to sleep, I reluctantly kicked the blankets off and sat up. Once again, I pulled on my robe and steeled myself to go deal with what this morning had to offer. Merry Christmas to me. Yeah, right. I hugged my aunt and uncle with what little enthusiasm I could muster. They gave the usual requisite pleasantries. "My, how you've grown. You've gotten so big. You look just like your father," and so on. They tousled my hair. They pinched my cheeks. I played along with it. Eventually, the touchy-feely annoyance was over, and we got down to the serious matter at hand, hot chocolate and presents. "And another one for Lucy," Aunt Patty was saying. I sat opposite them in a chair I had pulled up from the kitchen table. Lucy commenced opening the present like a starving raccoon takes to a trash can. "And finally," said Uncle Bobby, "one last one for little Joey Jr. I really hate when they call me that." But I said nothing, anything to get through this morning. From behind the couch, hidden from my vantage point, he brought out a long, narrow cardboard box. I perked up, genuinely intrigued now. The box was about 4 feet long, not too wide, not too deep. What could this extraordinary package be? Now I was a starving raccoon, hungry to find out what was inside. It was professionally wrapped in brown shipping paper, not festive wrapping paper of the season. Yet there was no shipping label, no identifiers of any sort on the package. I tore through the brown paper easily and used a pair of scissors to cut the tape on one end. I opened the box. I looked inside. My heart skipped. I had to tilt the box over to slide out the object inside while ivory tuning pegs attached to a dark maple neck, which extended all the way down to a shapely hollow body decorated in a natural pine wood finish, and an intricately painted rosetta around the guitar's perfectly shaped sounding hole. It was the most beautiful guitar I had ever seen. "For me?" I stammered. Mom positively beamed. It was the first time I had seen her smile like that in days, weeks even. "Absolutely," said Bobby. "But there's a story behind that guitar. Would you like to hear it?" You have my undivided attention, I responded. When your father and I were about your age, our father gave each of us our very own guitars. Your grandfather used to play every night sitting in front of the fire, and our mother would sing, and we would sit and listen and try to play along with him. He taught us every song he knew that he could think of, but over time, as we grew, the music got lost somewhere along the way. Joey, your father moved around a lot, and the guitar was lost in the shuffle. But one day, as I was cleaning out some old things, I came across our 2 guitars, which I hadn't even seen in years. I took them both to a shop and had them refurbished. Then when your father joined the military, I presented his old guitar to him as a going-away present, something to take with him to remember his family by. Do you know he took it with him everywhere he was stationed? It was in his personal effects and shipped back to me after your father, he faltered over the word, passed away, he finally finished. And now it only seems right that it should be passed on to you, as it was given to him by our father, from father to son, from father to son. Bobby finished speaking. Mom had started crying again. Patty was hugging her, also with tears in her eyes. Even Lucy had stopped playing with her newfound gifts long enough to have paid attention to the tale. She crept closer to the guitar and looked at it as if it were some mysterious treasure discovered in an ancient pyramid. I held the guitar gently in my hands. I strummed the strings. The sound was crystalline. Magnificent beauty to my ears. I knew literally nothing about how to play a guitar, but I knew right then and there that I was absolutely going to learn and make it a lifetime pursuit. This I vowed to myself. I don't know what to say, I finally spoke, and I honestly didn't. Then from behind me, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was a gentle, warming touch. I knew without looking it was my father's hand, but I did not turn around. I did not need to look to know that he was standing over me, tall and proud. I could feel the warmth of his smile on my neck. I strummed the guitar once more. In its crystal tones, I heard my father say, "Merry Christmas, Joey." "And I have one more thing," Bobby said after the silence had become palpable. He turned to Mom. "This one is for you." He handed her a large padded envelope. What is this?" she asked, perplexed. She tore open the envelope and slid out a thick stack of papers and a small key. "I don't understand, Bobby," she said. "What is this?" Bobby cleared his throat. 6 years ago, when Joe enlisted, he knew that there was a possibility this day might come. Before he shipped out, he came to me and said that in case it ever happened, he wanted to make sure you and the kids were taken care of. A new round of tears started to well up in Mom's eyes. He had me take out a separate life insurance policy on him, listing you as the benefactor. He began setting aside a small portion of his paycheck into a trust fund, which I opened in his name, that would revert to you upon the event of his death. The key opens a safety deposit box where he had me set aside a small nest egg for you, including his will, PIN code to his account, so forth. It's all yours. Bobby finished. Once you sign the papers. Mom leafed through the documents. As understanding took over, the tears began to cascade. "It's not much," Bobby continued, "but it should be enough for you to keep the house and tide you over for the next few years. I know my brother wishes he could be here himself, but it is the least I could do. And Patty and I are willing to help out as much as we can. You know that." Mom had finally collapsed. She was now weeping uncontrollably, and Patty held her as best she could. I could still feel my father's hand on my shoulder. "Go to her," I heard his voice say. I did so. For a long time, that was us. Our entire family huddled there on the couch in one giant mass of tears and snot. And even Lucy, the Queen of Grinch, did something completely unexpected and out of character for her. She kissed me on the forehead. Now the tears were streaming down my face as well as I hugged my sister. This was a Merry Christmas. Later that night, as I lay in bed, exhausted after the weep fest of the day, I turned to look at my newfound possession. The guitar was propped up in a corner by the closet, the light of the moon shining down upon it through my bedroom window. It was beautiful. Then, standing next to it in the shadow, I saw the familiar form of my father. He was still dressed in the sharp creases of his military uniform, as proud as ever. "Thank you, Dad," I said. "You're welcome, sport," he replied. "I knew you'd come back for Christmas. You promised and you did. I knew you would." "That I did, son. I made a promise. Will you be back next year?" "Joey," he said, stepping into the light. "I never left. I'll always be here. Always. Whenever you need me. Now go to sleep, son. I love you, Dad. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, sport. I love you too, son. With that, I turned over and promptly fell asleep. I never saw my dad again after that night. The end.
Wow, man, that was intense. I loved it. I'd read that one out of your book. It's definitely a favorite.
Very sad, but very good. Enjoyed
Yeah,
that.
great job, man.
Undoubtedly one of my most favorite stories I've ever written.
And see why.
My dad served in Vietnam, and of course he's still alive, but a lot of that was based on my childhood.
You
I
can
have-
tell that it's personal.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed each of y'all's personalities and how it came through in the stories, the ones you've written, and the way you read the stories, and the way you read the stories that aren't yours. This has been a wonderful episode.
Definitely.
I'm glad to have had you guys all for our holiday special.
Yeah.
It's weird because like it's not only the first Christmas without James, it's also the first Allied Society we've ever done without him, and like he would always show up a little bit late. So like for some reason in the back of my mind the whole episode I kept waiting for him to pop in and like having to remind myself. I'd catch myself thinking, oh, is he gonna pop in? And then I remember.
Yeah. I've been doing that with, oh, here's a meme and stuff. So
Yeah.
but Jenny
I
has
think he would have
that.
loved tonight.
Yeah. So to let everybody go, because I know it's getting late for you guys over out east there. Before we go, let us know. Start right here with Mr. Steve Van Samson. Where can we find you, and what do you have going on right now?
Sure. You guys can find me on the Book of Face. Also, you can find me lurking around Instagram and also Blue Sky, sorta, kinda. I don't really need another one of these platforms to suck more of my time, but there it is. My latest book is the Unpleasant Mr. Sniff, which was put out by Weird House Press, and I actually just finished a novella for Weird House that's going to be coming out in hasn't been announced yet, but it's going to be coming out sometime in early 2025. I think Q1 probably, knowing them. Yeah, been busy on that. Literally finished that like last week, so that was pretty cool. And working on some other stuff. Also, check out my podcast, Retro Redoctopus. We are in our, we're going to be starting our 7th season in a couple of weeks. So very
Nice.
cool. We're rocking and shocking and doing our thing, talking about nostalgia and all the geeky things that we loved when we were kids, and also doing fun interviews because I also like doing that. There's literally, it's not really on brand. It's just what we are. I don't know. We're Redoctopus. I don't know what to tell you.
I have your audio commercial memorized because I put the video for it. We don't
apologize.
We don't do the ads like during like the special shows like this, but like during all normal shows, our mid break, it's one of the main ads we play, and I just sit here and like recite it from memory in the background while I'm playing. I've seen it so many times.
Greetings and Shabibans.
Right.
Boy.
Right. Well, thanks, guys. We appreciate you, helping us out and being boosters for the show and for my stuff and everything. And, thanks for everything you guys have done for us over the years. And, Happy New Year to all of us and all of y'all. And hope everybody has a great 2025, or as great as we possibly can, I guess, is what I'll say.
I know some of us will be in the same place this year. Ron's coming to the haunt. Pyle's coming to the haunt. We're gonna have a little party here and rip it up, man.
Nice.
Miss Friday, where can we find you, and what do you have going on?
Well, I plan on continuing more stories about Friday and Sage's World. This last Friday, I got to join in and be a part of the Bloody Binge podcast, and it was awesome. Monday, we have Mac and Me, Uncle Necro's Tomb of the Terrible. And I'm not sure what we're doing Wednesday yet. I think we have Wednesday off because it's New Year's Day.
Yeah.
And I'll figure out Friday a little bit later. I have to see if I can get a hold of that lovely lady again. And yeah, I'm at the usual places. Owlite, Fake Horror, Friday with the Library in the Blue Box. And no, I'm not going to make it any shorter. And then Jennifer Elliott is my author page. I have no idea why I chose Friday with the Library in the Blue Box. It just seems really cool because I want to play off with the Doctor.
Hell yeah.
There you go. Ron, how about you?
You can find me at my author page on the Book of Paces, Ronald W. Gillespie Jr. author. I hope for 2025 that I will finally get this damn novel done, which I was hoping to have out in February, but now that's not going to happen. So who knows when it's actually going to be released. My goal is to try and continue submitting short stories for whatever anthologies that Fake Horror puts out for next year as well. I've got a couple of ideas already brewing in the back of my measly little brain. TikTok is going away, maybe. So there's a possibility I won't be on that anymore. And if that happens, then I will most likely be moving over to the Tube of You and possibly putting out my
bad.
The Tube of You.
Yeah.
The Tube of Goo.
Just
the tube of unnecessarily slick substances. I don't know. Yeah, I'll start putting martial arts content out on my YouTube channel and trying to stay basically relevant with all of this stuff, which I've been so slack over the holidays and not really doing much. So I'm glad that I could be here tonight and finally read this particular story without breaking down and, having my own eyes well up with tears. So I think that's a personal accomplishment for me. It's probably the first time I've ever done that. And I hope I get it past that it was not Victorian.
Yes, you do.
How dare you?
I know.
Mr. Tylor James, where can we find you and what do you have going on?
Well, my odious social media credentials are, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Tylor the Writer. And, essentially my last book that I published was also through, like Steve, through Weird House. And it's called Our Holy Leviathan. That came out earlier this year. And it is a very strange sea tale that is very much inspired by Edgar Allan Poe, William Hope Hodgson, Herman Melville, and Lovecraft. Those are the four big influences on that book. So that's my latest work. And then I got another short story collection coming out through Weird House early next year. We're looking at probably February or March. That's going to be called The Wikis and Other Macabre Tales. I'm very excited for that. I think that it might be representative of my best work so far. And then now I'm just working on yet another short story collection called Strange Invitations, Tales of Sublime Intoxication. My story Up in the Dark Belfry will be included in that book. And all those stories sort of pertain to the theme of the sublime, which the Romantic writers wrote a lot about. And that's essentially what I'm working on now.
Very nice. Yeah, we love Weird House. We love Rough House too, by the way.
Thanks.
When it comes to the houses, our favorite houses are Weird House and Rough House.
I only work with publishing companies that have house in the title. That's a hard rule.
Fair enough.
It works. Raz, where can we find you and what do you have going on?
Man. You can just find me on RazTSlasher.com. Every social, for the most part, I have is linked through there, but you're probably going to talk to Jenny anyway because she's the #1 Raz cosplayer in the world. First up I got coming out, Haunted Hospital, a novel I've been working on, is my thesis for my master's degree is almost done. I'm in my final course of the entire degree, which means I have to have this book done in the next 10 weeks. I mean, you guys will probably see it in about 15 weeks roughly. So that's been a long time going. It's been in my head for a very long time. You'll also find The Haunter's Handbook, Somehow We Manage, a comedy horror tale. Volume 1's coming out 2025 as well, along with the finale of the trilogy, Sounds as Crimson. So that's at least 3 big projects. Working on a lot of shorts. Right now is Lovecraftian spicy horror, my very first time doing this, called She Bleeds Demons. I'm hoping to bring that out in the near future as well. So hopefully a lot more in 2025 than I had in 2024.
Very cool. And if you guys want to find me, look up Carrie, Kari Sanders, on Facebook. If you see that, that is me judging you, and you'll know you're on the right place. You can find all of my author stuff there. You can all find all of my Owlite stuff there. You can find my Splash Pages stuff there. And normally I would be saying this Tuesday we are having on somebody on Splash Pages. However, we are taking the day off. We will, however, be potentially bringing you a new show on January 1st. Just
October.
Because,
That's a big break.
yeah. Because we've already accumulated so many news stories, we don't want our first show of the year, since we kept falling on holidays, to have like 4 weeks worth of news at the end, because
Right.
those guys like to fall asleep at times. So yeah, do that. Follow everybody here. Have some fun. And I hope everyone had a very pleasant holiday and has a happy new year. So thank you. And we shall see you all later.
Later, guys.